Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for tuning in today for Women in PropTech's PropTech Insights series. So today's quite a special edition. We're talking about revitalizing New York. So thank you very much to our friends at VTS for partnering with us on creating this great PropTech Insights. So today we have a stellar lineup of speakers. We have Steph from VTS, Jeanne Casey from Nuveen, and Merrie Frankel, as well from Columbia University and also from her own consulting organization. So I might just hand over to everybody to quickly introduce themselves, and then we will hop over to our great lineup of questions. All right, perhaps Steph, if you'd like to go.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie. I'm SVP of Marketing at VTS.
I'm Jeanne Casey. Sorry, I'm just going to jump in there. I'm the head of PropTech and Innovation at Nuveen Real Estate.
And last but not least, I'm Merrie Frankel. I am on the board of a public REIT. I teach at NYU in Columbia, and I have my own consulting practice.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining today. So we might stay with you for a moment, Merrie, and you have your fingers in a number of pies. You know all about New York real estate. And you're part of numerous industry groups and have regular conversations with real estate leaders in the city. So what are people talking about at the moment? What's really topical?
I would say what's topical, a number of things. ESG, climate, measurements for ESG. How are we going to address that in New York City and elsewhere? And there's various parts of ESG, and they take on different import depending upon the firm, the investor, and as you all know, environmental for E, social and governance. And I chair the Nominating and Governance Committee for a public company. So I'm grappling with these issues right now that I know a number of you are. How are we going to apply these metrics? How do the metrics apply to different types of companies? And clearly one size doesn't fit all. And, different components of ESG matter to different stakeholders. And for example, oversight of environmental and social issues is a key issue to institutional investors like Jeanne, along with understanding how companies and real estate owners, operators are going to look to reduce their environmental impact. And from number two, from a company perspective, ESG considerations often focus on how to attract and retain talent. From a social perspective, ensure you have a healthy, clean environment. And number three, going back to 2009, with the passage of the Greener, Greater Buildings Plan, the GGBP, and more recently, the Climate Modernization Act of 2019, New York itself was an early adopter of legislation focusing on understanding and identifying various opportunities to reduce the environmental impact of the greatest sources of greenhouse gas emissions in the city. And I think we're going to be talking about this a little bit more later, but those are the three major points.
Fantastic. Thank you for that synopsis. And yes, ESG is certainly topical, and especially talking about the ways that technology can help to solve some of these problems when it comes to, meeting sustainability goals, especially, and other considerations. Steph, in your role at VTS, you're very close to a lot of the landlords. What are they talking about? What matters to them? And, I know one of the themes we're all talking about definitely is attracting people back into the office. What are some of the discussions that you're having, across the board in cities like New York?
Absolutely. One of the groups that I manage is our tenant engagement strategy. So we work with landlords across the country, also in New York, on this very topic. And it was interesting. It's really timely because I just saw a Financial Times article today, and it was actually featuring New York, but I think it was the first article that I saw really closely tying inflation and how people are thinking about coming back to the office. And so in here was talking a lot about folks who felt like, when they go to the office and they buy lunch and they commute in, they're spending loads of money. And it's just really interesting. It's an additional barrier, I think, to coming back to the office. And I hear from pretty much all of our clients, which is how do we entice people back in? How do we work with our tenants to get their employees back in? What can we do to make this, efficient, but also attractive? And, this will come as no surprise, but I think we see it in our survey data, but we also see it when we do events with our clients, which is, free food, right? And I think it ties back to inflation. If you can offer free lunch or free breakfast, it seems, it might seem like a little thing, but it really does defray the costs. Will that get somebody into the office where they did not want to come in? Probably not, but I think it's sort of on that tipping point. And, I'll just use our office as an example. You can definitely see a flood of people in on days when we've got programming like that, either, an event after work or during lunch, where there are those offerings. And I think in part, it's probably twofold, which is, yes, that's nice as an incentive, but they also know that other people are going to come back in. And part of what I think we would probably all agree, there are definite benefits of being back in the office in terms of collaboration and socialization. And some of the things that I see both from our clients, but also in, just reading the news, people don't want to come into an empty office. They want to come in if their friends and colleagues are in as well. So kind of like, how do you build on that momentum, and how do you take advantage of the data that we're seeing, which is that people do want to come in if it's very intentional and that there are some benefits to it. So those are the conversations I'm having.
That's brilliant. And I love that you're able to measure and quantify what, what we are all kind of seeing and expecting, and that there is this link between activity and community that is being realized. So that's fantastic. So thank you for sharing those insights. So Jeanne, I might change over a little bit, because I know that you work across functions and across verticals at, in your role at Nuveen. So are there certain insights that you can share in relation to what some of the investors are interested in at this time?
Yeah, absolutely. So I should definitely clarify that I'm a PropTech venture capital investor, not a real estate investor, but work with many of the industry's leading or real estate investors. And I'd say what is really top of mind for everyone, not surprisingly, is the macro environment, the turbulence that we're currently in. And I think it's pretty widely recognized that real estate hasn't felt the pain quite yet in its entirety that we're looking at over the next few years. So we're hyper focused, we're organized by sector. And so whether it's office, which faces very different kinds of turbulence and macro dynamics than multifamily or industrial, really what's common across every sector is figuring out how to be a smart and careful investor headed into choppy and uncertain waters. And so from a prop tech perspective, and of course, I'm going to have a kind of data and prop tech angle to most things I say here and how I think, but there's a super focus on data. And so a lot of the initiatives really across sector, again, focuses on using data better and more efficiently, our own data, but also third-party data, and incorporating those more programmatically, those data sets, into how we're making decisions around new investments when we are deploying capital still in these uncertain times in a choppy environment, as well as operationally operating more efficiently based on data. And a lot of that also ties into sustainability and ESG themes as well. What's similarly common across sector is, even in this choppy macro environment, there is an unwavering focus on sustainability and ESG. It's now widely recognized that that's an important and forever piece of our business. And so figuring out how technology is going to help us measure and manage those goals is paramount.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing those insights. And I love seeing how there's this emergence of common themes, data supporting, ESG and those metrics, data supporting smart investments, being able to actually make data-led decisions, less intuitive decisions, but being, smarter across it. So thank you so much for sharing those insights. Merrie, I might come back to you as we talk about this theme, because you're quite literally writing the textbook on capital markets. So when we're talking about capital markets, what role does PropTech play, and especially in New York being a global financial center?
had to make sure my mute was off. Thank you. Well, PropTech is important so that buildings are updated with the most recent technology, which, you know, Steph and Jeanne were mentioning. And it's the way investors look at real estate companies and their leadership. Do you want to see in capital markets, are the companies up to speed on the latest technology, whether it's ESG, DEI, and these metrics are already playing out, some of which Jeanne was mentioning, in how institutional investors are scoring current and potential investments. And you have ISS, which scores, you know, all the major public, a lot of the major public companies, and you have Moody's and S&P, and the rating agencies have now their own ESG scoring system. And you have other private investors who have developed their own. So basically, it's important for companies to be up to speed and figure out how they're going to best represent what they're doing in terms of ESG. And again, one size doesn't fit all when it comes to this. Like, you know, I'm on the board of a public company. It's an Agree Realty Corp. It's a net lease company. With a net lease company, we own the buildings, but the tenants are responsible, triple net lease, for the insurance, the taxes, renovations of the property. There's only so much information you can get from them. So a lot of these metrics are very hard to fit with a net lease company because, and now going forward, the net lease companies are probably all going to start to embed in their new leases, getting certain information from their tenants so they can respond to these inquiries. But right now, it's not easy. So it's a matter of just trying to fit these requirements to meet what different types of companies can do.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing that information. And I might actually piggyback off some of those comments and come back to Steph, because nobody knows data like VTS, and especially when dealing with both landlords and tenants. So Steph, I might take you on a little bit of a historic journey. And you know, as we're thinking back to pre-pandemic versus today, you know, how have some of the priorities changed for tenants and, you know, as well as the occupants? What are you seeing? What are you know, what's kind of the buzz and the talk that you're hearing about?
Well, I'm hearing that, you know, I think what's part of the consideration set is, you know, it's just a very different formula now, I would say. I think companies are being, you know, obviously very thoughtful about the space that they need and what does that look like, right? And so I suspect, although I haven't seen this specifically in the data, but I suspect that there is, and I'm just going to use a couple of examples, even how we, you know, when we evaluate space for our own offices, I think it's a broader consideration set. So it used to be, I think, just at the C level, your HR team would think about what kind of office space do you have. Now we're seeing, I think, broader in terms of, well, are people commuting in? Is that going to be easy for them, right? So as I mentioned earlier, there were sort of financial hurdles. I think there's also sort of a, and this is covered a lot in the media in terms of people don't, you know, they got used to a year and a half plus of not commuting, right? And so now if you add that back in, that's an additional hurdle. So things like parking or bike storage. It's interesting when we actually do, we do a quarterly survey with tenants. We do this nationwide, and it changes over time. I don't think I'm quite ready to say this is the #1 amenity that, you know, all tenants are looking for, but you do see things like that creep up where that's a bigger consideration set now of how do you keep your workforce, you know, coming in if that's, you know, part of your company's sort of DNA. And how do you attract new talent as well? So it's retaining and attracting talent. And so I think there's a broader look that we're seeing from a data perspective from both companies and also individuals. So I would say that there's still so much up in the air, right? Like the numbers go up and down. What was it like in New York City? I think it's like it's close to 50% back into the office in some format. But that fluctuates. And, you know, does it dip in certain months? We don't know yet. Are people looking for different amenities? That's what we're trying to surface on an individual and I think also portfolio wide, but also lookalike companies for, you know, the clients that we work with. What trends are we seeing that we can share back with them is really what we're trying to concentrate on.
That's brilliant. And yeah, thank you for sharing that information. And I suppose I might come back to you, Jeanne, maybe talking, you know, more broadly across other asset classes. Are there some examples that you can share about where Nuveen's used PropTech, you know, some success stories perhaps, and you know, the way that your organization is engaged with PropTech solutions?
Yeah, absolutely. So that obviously varies quite a bit. So I could talk to, you know, one kind of platform level initiative that we just went live with last week, actually. So we just rolled out a deal path across all of our investment and asset management teams. And so that's really exciting, speaks directly to that data-driven decision-making on both the investment and asset management side. But I think when people think of PropTech, they also want to hear about, you know, amenities and more tangible uses of technology that elevates the experience actually within a space. And so one project that I'm really excited about and is in New York, we just revealed a bunch of new amenity spaces and really a facelift of 780 3rd Ave. And there's a lot of focus there on green spaces and collaboration and just an elevated experience when you're in all of the different spaces. There's lots of cool, you know, restaurant, coffee shop. I got a tour a few months back before it was open, and it was just really nice to be there. Lots of natural light, lots of thoughtfulness. Again, this is a little outside of PropTech specifically, but we are now thinking about how we can elevate that, you know, the bones and you know, what we've done architecturally and all the and amenity wise with technology. So we're, you know, working with Industrious across all of our New York office portfolio to really think about how to incorporate hospitality-like elements into the experience within our spaces. And so there is a lot of, you know, different technology components to the kind of user journey throughout a space, especially if you're talking about, you know, potentially the co-working spaces within these buildings. Something that I'm working on right now is a pilot of mobile access control. And so we're going to be hopefully rolling out a solution that enables amenity sharing actually between our buildings that are nearby. So 730 and 780, just a few blocks away. So I think, you know, technology in that way opens up better and more flexible use of physical spaces and amenities when you can more easily and automatically provision the right access in a safe way, obviously, between different spaces. So I'm super excited about those things.
Yeah, wonderful. It sounds like some fantastic initiatives are coming to life. And I might just stay with you for a moment, because we did say we'd come back to the theme of ESG. Can you maybe talk a little bit about what's happening with Nuveen and about how, you know, PropTech is helping to support some of your ESG objectives?
Sure. So our ESG, I'd say we're, you know, incorporating in the process of incorporating and refining our ESG best practices. And sometimes I don't love grouping ESG all together with, I know that's the term everyone uses, but we're talking about so many different things when you group together environmental, social, and governance. So I'm going to mostly talk about like the the E of ESG, because I always think sustainability S, the environmental component. So incorporating best practices, refining how our investment teams actually are incorporating those kinds of metrics in investment decisions. And then I'd say PropTech, and I'd say data helps most with that kind of expansion of owning a sustainability lens to our investment teams. Really, you know, for the first time, our real estate investors are now incorporating new data sets and data points into their decision-making processes. And so that's been a journey, but it's also been, you know, a really important one to go down. Within you know, technology and PropTech is also super important for measuring and managing our carbon footprint and understanding where we are. You know, we've made very public commitments to be net zero carbon across our portfolio by 2040. So That's fairly ambitious in the next 18 years. So we are in the process of, defining those milestones. And, before achieving those milestones, we've got to understand where we are today and then how we are going to get to the next milestone. And so, very much focused on, and this is again across sector, deploying technologies to help us first measure and then manage our energy use, and our carbon footprint is very much top of mind.
Absolutely. And thanks for sharing those insights. And I think especially in New York, with Local Law 97 coming into effect, part of the Climate Mobilization Act, it is all about how can you reduce that carbon footprint. So Merrie, I might come over to you again, in regards to, again, this S and ESG, the Local Law 97 coming in, and, with PropTech really being heralded as a solution, particularly for existing buildings. What opportunities do you see for PropTech entrepreneurs to try, help, the city in addressing these new considerations that are coming in that they really have to tackle and are, difficult problems to solve, but absolutely essential?
Well, thank you, Nikki. Local Law 97 is very interesting. I've talked to major building owners, and I live in a co-op, and I see what we're doing to tackle that issue. And one bottom line I will say is it is very hard with older buildings, no matter what you do, and they grade it A through D or E or F or whatever. And I know in my own co-op, we have converted to natural gas. We've done a number of things. We are never going to get higher than a D, if on the best of days, But Local Law 97, just to define it for everybody, it creates an opportunity to reduce the cost of energy across the city by incentivizing the deployment of renewable energy sources through carbon trading schemes, which can be sources of funding for communities to monetize efficient projects. And PropTech entrepreneurs can use the development and deployment of the new technologies and financing mechanisms to make innovations in energy efficiency, more accessible to real estate owners and tenants across the building. And by making these new technologies, which, I'm going to mention a few in a second, by making these new technologies available, which reduce buildings' carbon footprints, fewer properties may be subject to the significant fines under Local Law 97 and be able to make the needed upgrades to attract tenants interested in energy efficient office, residential, industrial, retail spaces. So they'll sign long-term leases. So I'm going to mention just 4 specific technologies or companies that I've seen, and some are New York City programs to help with, dealing with Local Law 97. One is a firm called Block Power, BLOCPOWER, and they're offering smart all-electric heating, cooling, and hot water systems to building owners for basically no money down. And they've helped about 1,200 buildings, or over 1,200 buildings with completed energy projects, and saved about anywhere from 20 to 40% on energy bills so far. And another company is Radiator Labs. They provide room local temperature controls and eliminate overheating in all radiator heated buildings, which a lot of us, if you live in an older building, it's going to have a radiator. And what do you do about it? I know even in my own apartment building, we looked at one point when I was on the board at changing the whole heating system. It was too expensive to do. So with Radiator Labs, building can be outfitted with their system to save up to about 45% on heating costs, and which, clearly will help tenants, hopefully these savings are passed through. And there's a number of other things that their technology can do also. 2 New York City type departments or accelerators. One is called the New York City Accelerator. They provide resources and training and one-on-one expert guidance to help building owners and industry professionals improve the energy efficiency and reduce carbon emissions from New York City buildings. And they've been around since about 2015. And they've provided assistance to over 9,000 buildings to boost energy performance and savings, improve air quality, etc. And also help owners to comply with the laws and avoid fines. And by the way, the New York City Accelerator is sponsored by the New York City Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice. The last accelerator I'm going to mention is Clean Fight. And they help growth stage companies scale in New York to speed their energy transition while boosting economic opportunities and job creation. And they collaborate with New York Best, the New York Battery and Energy Storage Consortium, and Binghamton University to focus on energy storage, innovation, and manufacturing. And by the way, Clean Fight is also supported by NYSERDA, which is the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, and the U.S. Department of Energy and New York New Energy Nexus. So there are a number of accelerators and companies, just to name a few, that are trying to help companies as well as landlords work out the local law 97 provisions.
Thank you for sharing those insights. And I might actually pop over to back over to you, Jeanne, just as we're, Merrie mentioned some accelerators. When you put on your VC lens, as you mentioned, you came up through the real estate industry and PropTech industry as a VC. So what excites you most about some of the opportunities in this space at the moment?
Oh man, enough where I bet my entire career on the space. So jokes aside, though, I'm this is a unique time, for the real estate industry, for the PropTech industry. I think it's going to be a challenging next few years, but I think it's going to be a really transformational next few years as well. The companies that come out on the other side, I think, are going to be stronger than ever, and really ready, if they haven't already, scaled to significant size, really, unprecedented from what we've seen so far in PropTech over the last few years. And what gets me really excited is, often at the intersection of sustainability, or even call it ESG, because I think there's a lot of exciting affordability tech too that I'll loop in there, and data and that has better insights and has some relevance to governance as well. So we'll call it the intersection of ESG and PropTech. I find really exciting because I think that our industry as a whole has recognized that this is not just about checking boxes anymore. ESG is here to stay. It's really important. And if done right, I think a strategy around ESG, and especially the environmental and sustainability side, can really open up new revenue opportunities, not just be, energy savings incrementally here and there, but enables us to rethink the way we do business, who we're partnering with. Merrie just mentioned all of these PropTech companies and different constituents that are super focused at the intersection of innovation and sustainability and technology. That really wasn't the case and didn't really exist a few years ago. So I'm super excited about the widening of who's involved, the new entrepreneurs from other industries too. We're going to start, and we have already started borrowing best practices from the financial services industry, from lots of other adjacent industries that have gone through digital transformation and, really embracing technology in the startup world in a meaningful way, really for the first time. So I'm excited about the new companies, the new business models, the new folks that are having greater roles in the real estate industry that didn't necessarily come and grow up in the industry. And I'm definitely one of them.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you for sharing those insights. And I mean, that's the thing. There's such big problems in front of us, and it really takes all hands on deck, just that intersection between different industries where we're starting to, talk about power, thinking about where does our power come from? This is becoming a hot topic in the real estate industry, which is quite important. But obviously it was some, topic that we've definitely touched upon quite a few times here. I'm going to come back to, especially for you, Steph, because you are the owner of so much data over at VTS. and I know when we spoke previously, you expressed just how key data-driven insights are that demonstrate ROI and the impact of different initiatives in buildings. As we start to close out, could you maybe just talk about, some of the insights about what is working and what isn't working according to the data, and what kind of a story can these data sets really tell?
Yes, great question. And I'll try to actually maybe tie up some of the themes that we're talking about here today as well and touch on those. I think from a data perspective, our clients are really looking to that, not just on a gut feel are things working, but our clients are investing a lot. Jeanne, you touched on this earlier in terms of, I think it was like lighting and, thinking about hospitality. And I'm hearing a lot from clients who really want to invest in that area, and they know that that's important to attract and retain their tenants. But that costs a lot of money, right? And that's a investment in the amenities that they're building out, and they want to make sure that it's utilized and that their tenants are actually getting value from it. So we have a lot of discussions with my clients in terms of, it might be the case that, they've built out a gym, or they built out, common space that people can use. Are their tenants using it? And so these are things that we can actually surface within some of our technology to let people know, certain hours that are available for everybody, or if it's a gym that, they're bringing in a yoga instructor, what times are those available? These are things that we can utilize technology to surface that to tenants, but also to be able to collect data back to, in an anonymized way, back to our clients to say, oh, we are getting usage. I'll give you one example, which I think was an aha moment for one of our clients. So they, speaking of sort of that wellness, they brought in a yoga instructor and had an event at 2 p.m., I want to say 2 weeks ago. So we're in September, and they were expecting that, that to be a hit. Almost nobody showed up. And, we don't have the data to say exactly why, but I have some hypothesis around this, right? I think you're coming back post Labor Day. September tends to be a busier time when people are focused. If you're in the office, you're probably trying to get work done. 2 p.m. is really quite different when you're in the office. I think even if you're at home now, I just think it's like, I don't know, there's a mindset shift. And I think the important thing is to just track that. That might be okay middle of summer. That I would actually recommend maybe we try that again. I think looking at that data, we actually went back to them and said, okay, so next time you bring this in, because we actually had survey data from their tenants to say, yes, we do want wellness, we do want yoga, yet nobody showed up. So now it's shifting time of day. So before work or after work is now what we're going to recommend doing. So it's insights like that where our clients can see, oh, it's not that they don't want yoga. It's just maybe it's a timing thing and how people are thinking about their work day. And so those are the pieces we want to make sure that we can surface insights so that they continue to A, build out that programming, and B, of the amenities that they've invested in, they're really going to see that ROI.
May I just add, you were so correct about people shifting their timing. There was an article, great article last week in the paper about restaurants that were used to be hopping at 9, 10 o'clock at night. Now everybody is shifting their dinner earlier, maybe because for 2.5 years we were all Zooming and we were home and maybe eating earlier. Maybe people are going to sleep earlier, watch whatever's going on. But it was fascinating. And I had noticed this when I walked down the street, that restaurants that normally were empty at 5:36 now are booming. And I was thinking that myself lately. And then the article backed that up. People are shifting when they want to have their dinner. They want to be home earlier. And there's a whole change going on, which was mirrored in what you're talking about.
I love it. And I love how we're all nodding because we all recall this article. It was absolutely brilliant. And I think, also a little bit relatable. I know I definitely started going to bed earlier and not being such a night owl. So, but I mean, the interesting thing that's really surfacing out of this is just how, being able to have that data just quantifies trends that we might be observing. And then as Steph was saying, when you can actually quantify these trends, then you can stop playing around with it. And for me, it's fascinating because what you're doing is you're bringing this, this ability to do like A/B testing, trying two different things with slight variables to see, what is that variable that makes the difference, which is the way that we operate in the online world into the physical world. So you can start testing, time and time again to understand human behavior and, patterns and optimization in the physical space. So, I love that Steph used this example of yoga as being something quite, simple, but really what it expresses is how people work and what they want and how they interact with people, their purpose for coming into the office, how that's shifted seasonally, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really fascinating. And, I love the types of insights that you've all just really surfaced about, especially data's role. And, I think this is just such a early conversation that in 5 years' time, when we reflect back on, with more and more organizations, collecting and prioritizing and sorting through their data in a really meaningful way, what that's going to start to surface as we work through this all. But we're getting through to the end of our time, so I am going to ask just one more question. I might put it through to Jeanne, then Merrie, and then to Steph to come off the back of it. So I suppose this topic has just been about New York and the new New York, and I'd like to ask you, what do you think the new New York is going to be like? One that really embraces ESG and technology. So maybe paint a picture of what you think New York might be like in the next, 5 to 10 years' time.
Oh man, I mean, I hope that it reflects and enhances all the things that have made New York what I think is the best city on earth. So just ever increasing diversity and culture and creativity and hustle. I think, we're growing as a startup, capital in America and really the world. We're one of course, many. And I think, that's going to continue to strengthen in the coming years and be a core part of the city's culture.
I concur. I think New York has already embraced ESG to an extent. Depending on the industry, I think it's going to continue with more technology being applied to it. And I would say, to use a baseball analogy, we're probably maybe in the second or third inning of the application of all of the ESG and the PropTech and everything to New York City businesses. And I see a long line ahead of improvements.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, New York is always sort of a leader in innovation. And I think in this space, you're going to continue to see New York lead in that. And I think from a, just sort of an individual perspective, people who don't live in New York, like you always read articles like New Yorkers aren't mean, they're actually really nice. And they are. New Yorkers care about their community. They care about their city. They care about the environment. And I think you're going to see that reflected back, whether we're talking about ESG, whether we're talking return to office. Like New York just has a vibrancy and life to it that I think the pandemic, maybe dulled for a moment, but you can see it really coming back, and it's coming back in different ways, which is exciting. But I think that's probably in the DNA of New York to just continue to evolve.
Amazing. Thank you all for your insights. And I agree with them all 100%. And I think one of the things that really makes New York special, and especially at this time, is that it's been through a lot of ups and downs, and it comes back bigger and stronger. That is the New York spirit. And now that you throw technology into the mix, as Jeanne was saying, there's the startup scene's just absolutely thriving. And I saw an article the other day saying that there's now more tech jobs than Wall Street jobs in New York too. So the actual character of the city is changing. So it's a city that continues to evolve and take on a different character. So I think that, coming back to Merrie, I don't think I've ever used a baseball analogy in my life, but here's a first. But, coming back into this innings, what it's actually going to bring, I think it's just going to be incredibly exciting. So I might thank all of you so much. This has just been a really wonderful and insightful discussion. I think what all of you have brought with the, what you're seeing in the industry, your personal experiences and all the rest has just been, so inspiring and so motivating. And, I'm so glad to know that you guys are leaders in the space that are just really driving forward, this conversation around, technology, ESG, and to know the reemergence of New York. So thank you so much to Jeanne, Merrie, and Steph. Thank you also to everybody that's tuned in to listen. I hope that you've enjoyed this special PropTech Insights edition as much as I have been enjoying being part of it. So thank you ever so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.